As our story begins, we find ourselves in the quiet city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The year is 1960, and a child is born. His name is Jeffrey Dahmer. On the surface, a typical American family welcomes their first child, a seemingly normal event that would later take on a dark significance. The picture of Dahmer displayed shows a young boy with an innocent smile, his eyes filled with childlike wonder. But little did anyone know that this innocent child would grow up to become one of the most notorious serial killers in history. This is where our journey begins. This is where we trace the roots of the monster that was to come. As we delve deeper into Dahmer's early life, the signs of his future monstrosity begin to emerge. But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on this image. The image of an innocent boy, unaware of the darkness that lay within him. This is Jeffrey Dahmer, before the world knew him as a monster. Jeffrey Dahmer, a name that sends chills down the spine, a man whose monstrosity knew no bounds. Imagine, if you will, a man so deeply entrenched in his own darkness that it consumed him, leaving behind only a shell of a human being capable of unspeakable horrors. This man, my friends, is Jeffrey Dahmer, a chilling figure who stands tall in the annals of true crime history. His name, now synonymous with the most terrifying aspects of humanity, continues to haunt us decades after his reign of terror came to an end. Born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Dahmer was an average guy on the surface. But beneath that unassuming exterior lurked a monster, a creature of darkness that would eventually claim the lives of 17 young men. 17 lives brutally taken far too soon, leaving behind a trail of pain and heartache that still resonates today. When the world finally discovered Dahmer's crimes in the summer of 1991, shockwaves of disbelief and horror swept across the globe. How could a man, a fellow human being, commit such horrendous acts? How could he carry out his dark fantasies without detection for over 13 years? These questions haunted the minds of millions as they struggled to comprehend the extent of Dahmer's brutality. Dahmer's story is not just a tale of murder and evil, it's a chilling reminder of the monsters that can lurk within us, hidden behind a mask of normality. It's a wake-up call, a stark warning that the face of evil is not always as clear-cut as we'd like to believe. But who was Jeffrey Dahmer before the world knew him as a monster? Scene script. Born on May 21, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer seemed to be a normal child. Yet even in those early years there were subtle signs of the monster that he would become. As a child, Dahmer was described as happy and energetic, but things began to change as he grew older. His fascination with the insides of animals was perhaps the first red flag. While it's not uncommon for children to show curiosity about the natural world, Dahmer's interest was of a different kind. He was particularly drawn to the bones and how they fit together, a macabre interest that would later take a dark turn. Entering adolescence, Dahmer's life took on a somber tone. His parents' tumultuous relationship and eventual divorce deeply affected him. As his home life crumbled, Dahmer retreated into himself. He became a loner, spending most of his time alone. This isolation was the perfect breeding ground for his disturbing thoughts to fester. During his high school years, Dahmer's behavior became increasingly eccentric. His classmates noted his odd quirks, such as faking seizures or mimicking cerebral palsy for laughs. Yet, beneath the bizarre antics was a young man wrestling with his own troubling desires. Dahmer was grappling with his sexual orientation, a struggle that would play a significant role in his future atrocities. His fascination with death also escalated during this period. Dahmer began collecting roadkill and dissecting the remains in his home, a chilling harbinger of his later crimes. His alcohol consumption also skyrocketed, a desperate attempt to suppress the monstrous urges that were beginning to surface. As Dahmer transitioned into adulthood, these troubling signs escalated. His obsession with death, his isolation, and his struggle with his own identity were all pieces of a horrifying puzzle. These factors, among others, were shaping Dahmer into the man who would become one of America's most notorious serial killers. Little did anyone know, a monster was brewing beneath the surface of this quiet, introverted boy. The year 1978, the beginning of a reign of terror that would last for more than a decade. In the quiet town of Bath, Ohio, Jeffrey Dahmer, a seemingly ordinary young man, committed his first act of unspeakable brutality. His victim was a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. Dahmer lured him to his home, promising a good time. Instead, Hicks met a gruesome end at the hands of a budding monster. But Hicks was just the beginning. Dahmer's thirst for violence had been awakened, and over the next 13 years, he would claim the lives of 16 more men. Each crime scene more horrifying than the last, each victim chosen with a chilling precision. Dahmer had a type. He preyed on young men and boys, often of color, many of them marginalized by society, easy targets for a predator lurking in the shadows. Dahmer's crimes were not just acts of murder, they were meticulously planned, heinously executed, and followed by grotesque acts of violation. His modus operandi was as horrifying as it was unique. Dahmer lured his victims with promises of money or modeling gigs, only to drug them, strangle them, and then, well, the details are enough to curdle the blood. But what sets Dahmer apart from other serial killers, what makes him the embodiment of our darkest nightmares, is his macabre fascination with trying to create zombies out of his victims. He experimented on the bodies of his victims, drilling into their skulls while they were still alive, injecting them with hydrochloric acid or boiling water in a twisted attempt to render them submissive and under his control. It was a horrifying blend of control, power, and a perverse desire to keep his victims with him forever. And all the while, Dahmer lived a double life. To his neighbors he was a polite if somewhat odd factory worker. To the world he was a monster hiding in plain sight, his apartment a house of horrors filled with photographic evidence of his crimes, bleached skulls and preserved body parts, trophies of his gruesome exploits. But like all reigns of terror, Dahmer's could not last forever. As the body count rose, so did the suspicion. The police were closing in, and a few brave survivors were beginning to tell their stories. Yet, for all his cunning and meticulous planning, Dahmer made mistakes. He grew careless, and it was this carelessness that would eventually lead to his downfall. The monster was out, and it was only a matter of time before it was cornered. The net was closing in, and the world was about to witness the fall of one of the most notorious serial killers in history. But that's a tale for another time. For now, let's leave the story here, in the pit of darkness that was Jeffrey Dahmer's reign of terror. For it's in understanding the depths of this darkness that we can truly appreciate the light. July 22, 1991, the day the monster was finally cornered. Take a moment to imagine the scene. The Milwaukee summer heat was stifling, yet a chill ran down the spine of every officer present as they stepped into the lair of Jeffrey Dahmer, the man who had become a living nightmare. The apartment, a nondescript building in a quiet neighborhood, was about to reveal secrets that would shake the world. Dahmer's arrest was only the start. As investigators delved deeper into his apartment, they unearthed a house of horrors, human remains casually strewn about, photographs documenting unspeakable acts, and tools of torture were among the ghastly discoveries. It was a chilling testament to the depths of Dahmer's depravity. The trial that followed was a media circus, with the public gripped by the gruesome details of Dahmer's crimes. The defense pleaded insanity, but the prosecution argued that Dahmer's meticulous planning and execution of his crimes suggested otherwise. The jury sided with the prosecution, and Dahmer was sentenced to a staggering 15 consecutive life terms. But the true horror lay not only in the crimes themselves, but in the man who committed them. Dahmer, with his glasses and soft-spoken demeanor, seemed almost ordinary, yet beneath that facade lurked a monster capable of acts that defied comprehension. How could such a man, they asked, commit such heinous acts? In the end, it was the very nature of his crimes that sealed Dahmer's fate. Locked away in a cold, lonely cell, he was left to reflect on his monstrous acts. It was there, in the stark solitude of confinement, that he ultimately met his end. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human soul. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that monsters are not always creatures of myth and legend. Sometimes they walk among us, hidden in plain sight. Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee Monster, met his end in the place he had sent so many others, a cold, lonely cell. The world breathed a sigh of relief. The monster was no more. But the scars he left behind, they remain. Jeffrey Dahmer's reign of terror had ended, but the aftershocks would continue to reverberate. The families of his victims, forever marked by loss, had to grapple with the brutal reality of their loved ones' fates. The public too was deeply affected, their sense of security shattered, their trust in their fellow man eroded. Beyond the immediate circle of grief and fear, Dahmer's atrocities had a far-reaching impact on the world of criminal psychology. They sparked a renewed interest in understanding the origins of such monstrous behavior, leading to advances in profiling and prevention techniques. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of Dahmer's crimes lies in the chilling reminder they serve. A reminder of the monstrosity that can lurk beneath the veneer of a seemingly ordinary man. Jeffrey Dahmer, A chilling reminder of the monstrosity that can lurk beneath the veneer of a seemingly ordinary man. Well, that was a dark tale, wasn't it? I don't know about you, but I could use a palate cleanser after that. Maybe a funny cat video or some good old-fashioned slapstick comedy. Something to remind us that despite the darkness we sometimes delve into, there's also a lot of light and laughter in the world. And speaking of light, remember to take care of your mental health. It's okay to step away, take a breather, and come back when you're ready. And, if you're still with us, why not hit that like button? Share this video with your friends and subscribe to our channel. Who knows? Maybe our next video will feature something a little less grim. Remember, even in the darkest tales, there's always a reason to smile. Like, share, and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there.